Hi friends! Today I've got an update from County Fair, and then we're talking about a management decision we're making to sell some of the goat herd. We'll talk about the factors influencing the decision, which goats we're selling and why, and how it will help us improve our herd long term. Let's get to it! Hey friends! Welcome to the Get Goatwise podcast. Are you longing to raise goats and other animals for food but don't know where to start? Do you want to be more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grocery store? Do you wish you had a mentor to walk you through raising livestock? Hi, I'm Millie, animal scientist, cattle girl turned goat rancher, co-owner of Dry Creek Livestock, and simple living enthusiast. For 15 years, I've been on a mission to raise all of our own meat, eggs, and dairy. Here, we'll talk about raising goats and other homestead livestock, how to create sustainable animal management systems that actually work, and a bit of off-grid life with kids and livestock. If you're ready to take control of your food supply, raise livestock with confidence, and provide your family with the most nourishing meat, eggs, and dairy available, you're in the right place. Kick off your muck boots, pour a cup of coffee, and let's talk livestock. Hey there! Here's what's happening on the ranch. We penned the does and kids for a few days while we were away at County Fair. They've been getting all the hay they can eat, but in the next day or two, they'll go back out on pasture. We had a little bit of rain, and that was very nice. After our couple days of cold mornings, it warmed right back up, and the heat at County Fair was an issue for the animals and the people, but we made it through. The kids had a very good showing at County Fair. Darcy had the reserve champion market goat and was reserve champion showman in her division for both goats and hogs, and she was the grand champion intermediate poultry showman. Ray had the 4th overall market hog and was reserve champion senior hog showman, and Ray's steer was 1st in its weight class and 4th overall, and Ray was grand champion senior steer showman. I learned some things this year. Like I've said many times, this livestock program is powerful when done right. And we had a couple of situations where it seemed like the kids weren't top priority in the decision making. As I'm sure you all know, if you've ever had anything to do with youth programs, sadly, this isn't uncommon. But we took the circumstances and used them as learning tools. The judge was a big fan of having the kids switch animals to show and test their showmanship skills. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing to have them do. Sometimes it's great, but sometimes it negates the work a kid has done training his own animal when they have to show an animal that clearly hasn't been worked. And in some cases, it's flat out dangerous. In the case of steers, you have a 1,400-pound animal on the end of a rope. And if things get unruly, it's a safety issue, especially if we have jumpy steers and inexperienced showmen. The day had been long and hard for Ray, showing pigs all morning and switching right over to showing steers. And then when the judge started in with the steer switching, we had some concerns. I talked with the family involved in the showmanship class that Ray was in, and considering that Ray is an inexperienced showman and their steer was a handful, we wanted to make sure nobody got hurt, and we all agreed that it would be in the best interest of the youth if the office would ask the judge to not have the senior kids switch steers. I made the request to the office, and it was met with a bunch of administrative word salad with zero acknowledgement for the safety issues and overall well-being of the kids. I have never asked for any kind of allowance for Ray, and I'm quite sure I never will again. I finally said, "Forget I mentioned it, I'll take care of it myself." So we coached Ray a little bit on what to do, made sure he was the first in the ring, and when the judge came and grabbed his lead to have him switch steers, he told her, "Ma'am, this is a safety issue, and I respectfully decline switching animals." I wasn't sure he'd have the courage to do it, but he did. And that moment right there, when my son advocated for himself when the adults who should have didn't, is the moment I will most remember from this county fair. I was sure his saying that would drop him to the bottom of the placings, and we were all completely fine with that. But it didn't. Maybe the judge respected his courage to speak up and point out his concerns. I'll never know, But what I do know is that teaching these kids to advocate for themselves when the adults in charge won't is a powerful thing, and we'll be doing more of that in the future. Hopefully, these kids will grow up with a heart for kids, and when they're the adult leaders in youth programs, the kids will always be first priority. Knowing that many of our board members and staff are young and some are new to the program, we need to give them a bunch of grace. And we'll also be teaching kids more skills to help advocate for themselves and make the program better. It is their program after all, and sometimes adults forget that in pursuit of the win. The kids said goodbye to their animals, and Ray's goodbye with Sherman was heart-wrenching. I wanted a picture, but it was a sacred moment I couldn't interrupt with the camera. Overall, it was a good week. I'm incredibly grateful for the amazing team of livestock experts we have teaching and supporting our kids. I'm grateful I get to help new families get a good start in the program, and I have to brag on them a bit. My hog showman won all of the hog showmanship buckles except one, and they earned it, putting in the work and effort to show like champions. The first-year kids have a special place in my heart. We'll rest for a bit and then start planning for next year. I'm glad it's time to move on to the next season on the ranch. Well, that was a long update. Let's switch gears and talk about some management decisions we're making with the goats. I haven't completely finished tallying up the kidding numbers, but I've looked at them enough to have a pretty good idea of how things are looking for the year. Next week, I'll give the full kidding season report, but today I want to talk about some things that are happening with the goat herd. Nothing too major, just regular management decisions, but I want to share because it gives some insight into the way we look at data, evaluate it, and make changes to optimize production and resources. First, let's go over the current situation with resources. It's been dry here. Hay prices are climbing. We have already purchased our hay, but we need to make sure and not run out this year because more hay will likely be expensive and possibly not be available. If we don't get good moisture this winter, next year's hay prices will be even higher. Fence. We've been planning to build goat fence around our meadow pasture and include a couple of other pastures as well. And we will be building a new night trap down near the river also. We need to pen the meadow goats every night because of predators. Once we get that done, we will extend our grazing season both in the spring and fall by a couple months. I think it'll be enough to cut our winter hay in half on most years. But we haven't gotten those projects done yet, so we'll probably be feeding hay a lot earlier than we had planned to if that fence had been done this fall. The good news is that we have more fence jobs than we can do, so we're going to get after all of that and then see where we get on our projects. A couple years ago, we had a mild fall, and we were finishing up a night trap in December. Most years that wouldn't be possible here, so we'll see how this fall goes. It's a trade-off for sure. When we have outside fence work, we want to do as much as possible, but that means that our projects take a back seat, and that's okay. We're getting things done. It's just us doing the building projects and the fence, so it takes time. The next factor is animal production. The preliminary numbers are showing that the Spanish goats will wean at least 20% more kids than the Boer goats. That's a big deal. Remember, our goal is to have a goat herd that is highly productive with strong maternal traits and low input requirements for our environment. I'm thinking that the ultimate productivity calculation will be pounds of kid weaned per pound of doe. To get that, we'll be weighing all the kids at weaning as well as weighing the does, which we don't do very often. Because the Spanish does are quite a bit smaller than the Boer does, my guess is that they are weaning a lot more pounds of kid per pound of body weight. Why does this matter? Smaller does eat less. We calculate their dry matter feed intake based on body weight. If these smaller does with low to moderate milk production wean more pounds of kid, that means they are probably doing it with less inputs too, which means they are more profitable. Of course, I won't know any of that for sure until we actually get to weaning, weigh everything, and do the final numbers, but that's what it's looking like right now. Sale potential. This is the one thing that has held me back from going all Spanish and moving away from the Boer goats. The Boer goats almost always sell better than Spanish goats. Last spring, when we took goats to the sale, we were on top of the marketing and our Spanish kids actually outsold our Boer kids. So I'm a lot less worried about that than I was a year ago. I'm fond of the Boers, so I really don't want to completely get rid of them, and our Boer herd is incredibly productive compared to most. Here's the strategy for now. We are selling about 20 Boer does, some with kids and some without, as well as 7 yearling Boer does right out of our replacement doe pen, so they'll make a good start for someone looking to get into goats. We're also selling a handful of Spanish does, the ones that don't fit our system quite as well, and that will tighten up our genetics on the Spanish herd. I sold the Cedar Eater buck. He's already sired 3 fantastic kid crops here, and it was time for him to move on. But rather than replace him with another Boer buck, we're going to use a Spanish buck on all of the does this year. Ultimately, I see us bringing back a Boer buck as a terminal sire once we have the numbers to do that. A terminal sire means that the offspring would all go to market, and none would be retained as breeding stock. This is really all an experiment, and plans could change, but I think it's a smart move to downsize a bit, or at least not grow the herd this year, and give us some time to get our infrastructure caught up so we're prepared for that growth. I hope this episode gives you an inside view of the management decision process we use, and maybe some factors to consider in starting or growing your own goat herd. If you have questions, email millie@getgoatwise.com or head on over to the community and start a conversation. That's at getgoatwise.com/community. And make sure you're on our insiders list to get weekly updates from the ranch. Sign up at getgoatwise.com/insider. See you next week. Hey there. Thanks for listening today. I'm so glad you're here. If this episode helped you or encouraged you in some way, share the link with your homesteading friends. And if you really want to help me out, click on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. You can connect with me on Instagram or email linked in the show notes, and meet me back here soon for more Get Goat Wise.